and Hope.
Yes.
How are you today?
Thank you. I am doing great. Thank you guys for watching our video. This is a special edition. Today we're talking Black history, Black life, Black experiences. It's February, it's Black History Month, and we have these great authors, and we're going to talk about the celebration of Black lives, right?
Yes.
Yes. And so some of these authors, I am actually discovering them for the first time. So we always say, you know, learning, it's a lifelong commitment. So what do you have?
So our first book is called Whoosh.
Yes.
Lonnie Johnson's Super Soaker Stream of Inventions.
Yes.
It was written by Chris Barton and illustrated by Don Tate. This is an amazing book talking about Lonnie Johnson and his life and struggles as an African American inventor. He always loved inventing from a young age. As a child, he loved making rockets.
Yes.
And as he grew up, he was very, very smart. He even worked for NASA for a short while. And he invented a super soaker, which is a water gun, and it took many, many tries to finally get accepted, and it was a big hit.
Yes, and even today, right? Mm-hmm. Water guns, I mean, it's like the most popular toy, right?
Yes.
And so this is very inspiring. So when we're talking about the celebration of Black experiences, it's also to inspire not just Black kids, but, you know, any child out there really about just following your passion. He was really passionate, you know, when he was young. Sometimes they didn't even have space in his house to put all his, you know, gadgets and toys, things
Yes.
that he was building. And so this is a great book. Parents, you know, if you can find this book for your little one, they are going to learn something and be inspired. So, moving on.
Okay guys, now it's time for a second book called Grace Goes to Washington.
Yes.
This book was written by Kelly DiPuccio and pictures by Leeuwen Pham.
Yes.
This book is about a girl named Grace, and her class is learning about the three
branches
of government. So she is actually in the student council, and they're trying to make a decision on what to use the bake sale money for.
Yes.
And they have three options. They have equipment for gym.
Yes.
They have books.
Library books.
And music.
Yes.
Equipment.
Yes.
So they are really torn about what to do and what to choose.
Mm-hmm.
And then Grace sees a little boy at recess actually sketching, and she thinks his sketches are really good.
Yes.
So she helps him design a pillar that says Friends, and it's basically a monument
Yes.
for friends. And if you need a friend, you just go there and to let people know that you need a friend. What they decide on doing with the money. So this is a great book about friendship and about decision making.
Yes.
And about the U.S. government.
Yes. And, you know, I like this book because here again, we see, you know, Grace, she's a Black child, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we see her learning about the government, the institution. And in this book, we have so many kids. You have the illustration. You really see all shades, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this just shows you how together we can live in a better world, right?
Yes.
And I really love the fact that at the end, we see these kids choosing what is best for the whole school and not just what is best for one person, right? Mm-hmm. So another great book for inspiration, whether you are a Black child, a white, any race, this book is really great for kids.
Okay guys, our next book is called Cant Scare Me by Ashley Brand. This is an amazing book. It's about a little boy who's such a troublemaker that his parents decide to send him to stay with his grandma for a while.
Yes.
And his grandma tells him a story of if you stay out too late, then you will run into a two-headed and three-headed hideous giant.
Yes.
And hoping to scare him into behaving. But it doesn't work. So the next day, him and his grandma are working in the fields when he slips away.
Mm-hmm.
For the whole day, he's having fun eating mangoes, climbing trees, and playing his flute. He is really good at singing and playing his flute that he bumps into a giant since he was staying out too late, and it was an awful two-headed giant. And he's playing his song for the giant, and the giant tells him that he will run into his brother, who is a three-headed giant.
Yes.
And so the boy keeps on playing and singing his beautiful song, and he does eventually bump into the three-headed giant.
So don't give away the end of the book so that, you leave that suspense, right?
Yes.
So throughout the book, we're going to see, at the end of the book, we're going to see what will really scare him, right?
Yes, and
Okay.
the pictures in this book are very vibrant and colorful.
Yes.
I really like them.
Yes.
As you can see, lots of colors.
Yes. And thank you very much. I really appreciate that, summary, right?
Mhm.
And wow, look at that smile. You can see the confidence, right? He said, I am not scared. And so, great book. Cant Scare Me by Ashley Brand. Okay, guys, our next selection is Poetry for Young People, Langston Hughes stories, right? And Langston Hughes was a famous poet. He was maybe one of the most famous, African-American poet in the 20th century. He wrote extensively about Black lives, Black culture, Black experiences. And, he lived during this difficult time of Black history. And so it was very important for him to not just talk about the injustices that Black people faced during in those days, but he also wanted to celebrate Black lives and Black culture. And it was also very important for him to connect, African Americans with their ancestral land. So he also talks a lot about, African culture, so he brings that in his poem. And the most important thing to remember too is that his language was very ordinary, simple language, compared to other poets who often use like a very high level of whether it's English language or any language. But so his poetry is very accessible, to everyday, ordinary people. And remember, I read some of the poem with you, and I really loved it. And one of the poems, The Dream Keeper, here he says, bring me all of your dreams, you dreamers. Bring me all of your hard melodies, that I may wrap them in a blue cloud cloth, away from the two rough fingers of the war. Now, when he talks about the rough fingers of the war, you can see him bringing that suffering, right? Because rough finger means what? Anything that is a challenge, to your life, to your upbringing, to maybe the challenge to your happiness. And so he's saying, even though we have these challenges, bring me your dream, and I will wrap them in a cloud cloth, right? Mm-hmm. So we still have to dream even when we have challenges, and we know that we can overcome it. And that's the message in most of his poems. I am discovering a lot about him, And I will actually put a link down below of an interview where they are actually talking about his autobiography. And so I learned a lot from that interview with Alice Walker. So I will be putting the link down below. So parents, if you want your child to know more about Langston Hughes poetry for young people, this is one of the books that you can pick at your local library, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so next one. Do you want to talk about that book?
This next book is called Carla and the Christmas Cornbread.
Yes.
By Carla Hall.
Yes.
Illustrated by Chelsea Harris. It looks like this book was actually like maybe about her because the author is named Carla and the girl is named Carla.
Yes.
So this book is about Carla and her sister going to their grandparents' house for Christmas, and they are super excited and they enjoy some cornbread there and a delicious meal.
Yes.
After the meal, Carla is in the kitchen and sees a really nice, delicious looking cookie and takes a bite. And then her sister tells her, that cookie was for Santa.
Yes.
And she just gets really sad and emotional and just starts crying.
Yes.
And then her grandmother calls her over and she is super scared and she feels so bad and is worried that Santa will put her on the naughty list. But her grandma comforts her and helps her make a delicious cornbread for Santa. So they leave out the cornbread for Santa, and the next morning they see that he eats all of it and leaves only one slice for Carla to enjoy.
Great. And thank you. I love this book. Look at the illustration, really bright. And I actually, Carla Hall, she's a TV, personality. She does a lot of cooking shows, and I watch cooking shows. So this is a great book. And so yes, I really love this book because when I was reading this book, I can see Carla Hall, the TV personality, in this book. And I think she was really bringing out her life stories in this book. And so it's really refreshing when you're actually reading a book and then you can connect with the authors, right?
Yes.
Yes. And so, great book. And again, this is one of the books that is celebrating, Black life, Black culture, Black experiences. So here you see a family, right? And you see a family preparing for Christmas. So thank you very much. And how about the next book?
Our next book is called The Other Side, written by Jacqueline Woodson and illustrated by E.B. Lewis.
Yes.
This is a really good book, maybe one of my favorite books from today. It's about a little girl who lives on kind of almost like a farm landscape.
Yes.
And there's a fence separating her house and another little girl's house. Now, the girls may be very alike, but in a lot of ways they are different.
Yes.
Because this little girl right here, as you can see, is an African American girl. And the other girl is white. So her parents, well, her mom kind of warned her maybe not to talk to her. But one day, they do actually start talking, and they become really, really good friends. And even this little girl's other friends even accept her and let her play with them. So this is a really nice book for kids everywhere because even if two people might be different, they can still become really great friends.
Yes. And yes, thank you very much. And again, here we see children, in their own world, she doesn't understand why she can't really play with the other little girl, right? And so when she finally have that connection, she discovered that, here I have this good friend of mine, even though she doesn't look like me, right? And so this is a great book. And again, like I said, if you are, a black family and you pick up a book which celebrate black life, or any other child, if you are a white family and you pick up a book, celebrating black lives, you're still teaching your child something, right?
Yes.
So no matter the color of your skin, so we can all come together. And I love the story in this book because at the end, they actually say they hope that one day, can you finish what they said?
Someone knocks down the old
fence. Yes. And the fence here can be symbol of what? Of
separation.
It can be symbol of the challenges. The symbols of things that people say, oh, because I don't look like you, I don't know who you are. So the fence is a symbol of all these things that keep us apart from one another. So great book.
Yeah. Hey guys, our next book is called The Oldest Student, How Mary Walker Learned to Read.
Yes.
Written by Rita Lorraine Hubbard and O.G. Mora.
Yes.
This book is about Mary Walker and her struggling life, but her long, very meaningful, hardworking life.
Yes.
Now, Mary Walker was born into slavery, but at the age of 15, she was actually freed. And at the age of 20, she was married and had her first child. Even at the age of 20, she still didn't know how to read or write because at the time, slaves weren't allowed to learn how to read or write.
Yes.
So even after she was freed, she never really had the time or the books to learn how to read.
Yes.
At age 68, she was still working and raising money for her church.
Yes.
And at the age of 114, she was the last remaining member of her family. And at 116, Mary Walker learned to read. So it was at her actual nursing home that she actually took lessons on how to learn how to read and write, and she worked long hours into the night learning and practicing how to write even simple words, even just like her name.
Wow.
But eventually at the age of 116, she finally successfully learned how to read and write.
Wow, isn't that a beautiful story?
Yes.
Wow. First of all, it's a story about, a woman who worked all her life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But she still find a way to accomplish that dream of hers, which was to learn how to read. And this is a very inspiring story. And it doesn't matter whether you are a black person or a white person or anything in between. This book is universal, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really about people's ability to overcome challenges. So I really love that story.
And actually at the back of the book it says, "You're never too old to learn," which is very true. You can learn at any age.
Yes.
So this is a very good book to pick up at your local library.
Thank you.
Okay, our last but definitely not least,
Yes, in children's.
Pecan Pie Baby.
Yes.
Written by Jacqueline Woodson and illustrated by Sophia Blackall. This book is about this little girl named Gia and how she has mixed feelings about her new baby sister that will be born.
Yes.
Her mom is always talking about the baby to her and always talking about that to her friends, and even little Gia's friends are even mentioning the baby. So eventually Gia kind of gets sick of it, and while at Thanksgiving her mom and friends and family are talking about the baby, and she just gets really frustrated and feels like no one is paying attention to her or really caring about her, and she says, "I'm so sick of that ding-dang baby." And her mother actually sends her to her room.
Yes.
Later, her mom actually joins her and just tells her that it's okay, and that even when the baby's born, she's still going to love Gia the same, and that she's actually going to miss the time she had just with Gia.
Yes.
And the book is just really nice, really simple and cute and amazing if you have a child and you are going to have a baby and you just want to let them know that you will always love them.
Yes, I really like the way, the author takes, this is really a difficult issue for kids, Usually when the mother is expecting, then the other child feels like they're paying too much attention about the newborn child, or maybe
Left out.
the child will feel left out. But this author, in writing this book, really shows how you can ease that anxiety, right?
Yes.
Because throughout the book, you will see that each time the mother says, "Hey, let's go and get a piece of pie," because you love pie, I love pie, and at the end, she's even saying, "This baby loves pie," and they finally connected, with just that dessert, the love of pecan pie.
Yes.
And you can see that the child now, she feels loved, and she feels like even though the baby is coming, but she doesn't feel so anxious. She knows that the mother is going to take care of her and still take care of the baby. Guys, the next book, it's a collection of poems by Nikki Giovanni, "I Am Love," illustrated by Ashley Bryan. So in this book, again, with vivid illustration, we have poem for, elementary school kid. Beautiful poem. And the theme here, again, is the celebration of Black life, Black experiences. And I have this beautiful poem at the end. Let me read. "I am a mirror. I reflect the grace of my mother, the tenacity of my grandmother, the patience of my grandfather, the sweat of my great-grandmother, the hope of my great-grandfather, the song of my ancestors." And then you see the mirror right there, And when I was reading this poem, I can see, my grandmother reflected the tenacity. She was a strong woman, and she often visited us, and I remember her telling us, beautiful story, but she was very hardworking. She worked till she was in her 90s. She was still going, to her farm. And here again, like I said, even though these poems are for children, but let me tell you, I could see me reading, I saw myself reading this poem and enjoying the whole thing very much. And because I didn't grow up, reading, poetry books, so this is really great. And I hope, parents, that you can find this book or any other poetry book celebrating Black life for your children. And it doesn't matter if you are a white family or Black family or, Asian, anything in between. This is about love, joy, and it's universal. Okay?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And the next one is Clown an ode to the fresh cut. And you know, as a mother to a teenager, you can imagine, you know, hair is very important in the Black community, right? And so this little boy, he goes to the barber to get his hair cut. And throughout the book, you know, it tells you a little bit of just how that experience is. And the author of this book actually, so I would say the title is Crown, an ode to the fresh cut, written by Derek Bond and illustrated by Gordon C. James. And the author actually took the inspiration from his own trip to the barber. And so this is a great book, you know, for Black family. And that experience of going to the barber and have your hair cut, you know. And usually the barber shop was a place where people talk about, you know, their love, their suffering, their pain, their joy. And so and every time, imagine the experience of getting a haircut. When you leave the barber shop, you are fresh. And here he actually compared it to like a painting ready for a museum. So you can imagine, so I really loved it. So great book. And again, this is an empowering book, you know, for young men. And I can't even imagine, see that? He looks so confident after his haircut. So great selection. And now we are going to talk about a young adult's book, right? This one, Wade Hudson, Defiant, Growing Up in the Jim Crow South. This is a non-fiction book. It's a memoir. And Wade Hudson, the author of this book, he grew up in the South, Mansfield, Louisiana. And this was during the time when there was this law, we talk about Jim Crow laws, and these were laws that were meant for Black people and white people to live separate. So he talks about the people in the community who actually help him, you know, they nurture him. It's the whole community, and his teacher, his family, you know, we have this close-knit family, but we also have the extended family, and all these people help support a child in the community. And it was also around a time when there was a lot of things happening, you know, in the United States. And I like this memoir because at the end of the book, actually, we have a timeline of various events, you know, and these are events that really shaped who he became, because it was during the struggle of racial, you know, segregation, and finally what we call the civil rights movement, and in the 1963 with Martin Luther King March. And so he talks a lot about how this event shaped him as a young man. And so this is very important. And I hope, you know, parents, especially us, immigrant parents, it's very important to know about this history. Because to tell you the truth, history informs us on the past, right? And what do? We can correct mistakes of the past to build a better future.
Yeah.
So, great. Okay, and to wrap up, we are going to talk about this book, My Life, My Love, My Legacy, Coretta Scott King, as told to the Reverend Dr. Barbara Reynolds. So this book is about Martin Luther King's wife, Coretta Scott King. And in this memoir, this is for adults. She talks about her life, you know, being a mother, how she also had her own career, but she was also the wife, you know, of Martin Luther King. And you can imagine trying to take up all these tasks. And most importantly, she talks about her life after her husband was assassinated. And so she talks about the difficulties of keeping his legacy alive. And I am still reading this book. I'm not even done. But let me tell you, it was so much refreshing for me, you know, to actually read about her, because a lot of time I always go to Martin Luther King's, you know, life, and then the famous I Have a Dream speech. Mm-hmm. But for me this year, I chose to read about, you know, his wife's legacies too. So this is very important. And you know, I actually visited Atlanta, Georgia, and so I know the place, you know, where he was a minister. I've seen the reflection. They have like a reflective pool, and that's where he was buried. So I actually visited the place, and so when I was reading this, and you know, the memory of that trip came back to mind.
That's very interesting.
Yes.
It would be cool if I could go with you.
Oh, sure, sure. I hope that one day we could visit, you know, together. And many people actually, you know, it's becoming a, how can I say, not a museum, but it's
a very historical
place. And so many people come every year to, and she, in this book, she actually talks about the challenges of maintaining the place, you know, for generations to come. So it will be interesting for you to go on a trip there. And so I would recommend this book now that we are celebrating Black history. And Black history is really American history, it's world history, and so very important book.
Yes. So that's our last book. So without further ado, let me tell you guys, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video if you enjoyed it. And make sure to click that notification bell down below so you know when we post new videos every single time.
Yes, and don't forget to check out our website, because I will be posting the list, you know, of these books that we have discussed today, and maybe even more, right?
Yes.
So thank you very much, and happy Black History. What do you say?
Bye.